Greetings, YouTube. Today I'd like to talk about Axe Cop. I just finished watching the 22 episode series. There was 12 episodes in the first season and 10 in the second of the animated version of Axe Cop. And I mean, when I say literally stop watching it, it was 5 minutes ago. Beauty of the internet, isn't it? Technology is a wonder. And I had known about Axe Cop, and I had actually read some of the webcomics, but not all of them. And I recently got a chance to see the entire series, and I have to say that it was both marvelous and disturbing. I mean, Nick Offerman as the main character, Axe Cop, was awesome. For those that don't know, Axe Cop is a series of webcomics that were written by Ethan and Malachi Nicole, two brothers. Now, Ethan, at the time of the original writing, was 28, and his brother Malachi was 5. So Malachi is the one that came up with the ideas, and Ethan's the one that turned them into something that made some kind of coherent sense. But he never changed the fact that the entire comic was written from the perspective of a 5-year-old, which is one of the reasons that the series only went so many episodes, because eventually Malachi got old enough that he began to not view the world from the perspective of a child that age. And that was some of the charm and the marvel of Axe Cop, is that it was being viewed through the lens of that 5-year-old mind, that worldview. So as he got older and began to have more of a structured brain and concepts of narrative and things like that, it ceased to be what Ethan wanted it to be. He also has another webcomic called Bearmageddon, which I have not read, though I'm going to go hunt it down and take a look at it shortly. And it's great because so many of the concepts are broad in a way that only a child could make them broad. For example, Axe Cop was originally just known as the Cop until he found the perfect axe, and then he became Axe Cop. He needed a partner, so he put on tryouts, and he picked Flute Cop to be his, and that's the name they always use, Flute Cop and Axe Cop. And in fact, he at times Axe Cop has worn outfits that had his name emblazoned on here. It just says Axe, AXE. And they are darkly humorous because Axe Cop's thing is that he cuts the heads off of bad guys. It's disturbing through the fact that a 28-year-old let this enter the world knowing that it was from the perspective of a 5-year-old who didn't understand how the world worked. And yet, how Malachi viewed the world, to me, is a little disturbing. Girls are dumb. Now, you could say that, lots of kids, lots of small boys say that girls are dumb. Why? Malachi didn't enter the world thinking girls are dumb. Somewhere along the lines, he had to be taught that girls are dumb, or allowed to believe that and never corrected. 5-year-olds are smart enough to understand how to treat people well. He thinks babies are dumb. Now, I kind of understand this one, particularly if he ends up having a younger brother or something, or a younger sister. He may not like the attention that they're taking away from him. I have no idea if this is true or not. But I kind of understand that, but he should have been corrected by Ethan, if no one else. Babies aren't dumb. They're just babies. They don't know as much as a 5-year-old, just as 5-year-olds don't know as much as a 28-year-old. But also, Malachi thinks that the police, their job is to just use their guns to shoot bad guys. So it's okay to just show up and shoot a bad guy, and it's okay for Axe Cop to just show up and cut the bad guy's head off. It is absolute clear-cut, pardon the pun, morality. Is morality, stripped of any form of complexity. And 5-year-olds are able to understand to a great degree what is and isn't good and bad. They can be taught that, there are rules and we have to follow them. But Axe Cop follows no rules. He is this hyper-masculine character who is flawless in every way. He can do everything perfectly. He is the fastest, the strongest. He is never wrong. Um, and where did Malachi get the concept of this hyper-masculine character? He didn't arrive at that on his own. He had to have somebody feeding him certain forms of media that led him to believe that this kind of hyper-masculinity was something to be admired, something that to be, you know, desired. And that's a little bit disturbing to me. I know you're going to think, oh, you're reading too much into this. Well, I don't think I am. Kids don't come into the world knowing how to speak English or Spanish or French or Arabic or any language. They come into the world knowing no language whatsoever. We have to teach them that language. They don't come into the world with views on gender or views on babies or views on justice. We have to teach them. Either directly, you tell the kid that this is what, your concepts on gender or justice should be, or from the media they absorb, which then helps them understand the world of gender and justice. But if they get the wrong kind of media, or the horribly traditional media that's been put forth by like the patriarchy, filled with toxic masculinity, they're going to absorb that, and it's going to be reflected in their fantasies, in their play. And it disturbs me that a 5-year-old was allowed to continue this kind of play for long enough to fill out a webcomic, long enough to give enough, script inspirations to do a 22-volume series, 22-episode series, without being corrected. Now, I'd be intrigued to speak to Malachi now because he'd be 19 now, so he's a full-blown adult now. Like, how did you arrive at those places? Now, I can tell you how I arrived at the worldview I had as a 5-year-old, and it wasn't healthy. So I would find it intriguing to see if Malachi, as an adult, thinks that his upbringing was healthy because the world can see a snapshot of his childhood frame of reference forever. We can look at Malachi's view of how he saw the world as a 5-year-old for as long as those webcomics and as long as those animated episodes exist. So, unlike most of us who don't remember them, our frame of reference from when we're 5, have no memory of that, Malachi does. Malachi can see it anytime he wants to. Now, did I enjoy Axe Cop? Yes, I did. But I also have a very, very dark sense of humor. It's black hole dark. And part of that is because of my upbringing. And so I appreciate the writing and the satire and the way that he pokes fun at traditional superhero stories. He pokes fun at specific superheroes. They were like, Hellboy and Batman and a number of other people. They were all very much lampooned by this series. The concepts of Superman and things like that, all of them were very much lampooned by this series, which was enjoyable because I've been a fan of comics my whole life. But it's still the world view of a 5-year-old, one that he was allowed to pursue apparently without restriction. Because if he had been corrected in the beginning and told, this right here, that's not a particularly healthy way of looking at the world. Of course, you couch that in terms that a 5-year-old will grasp. Then there wouldn't have been the same episodes that followed. And even though a 5-year-old could probably spew out a whole lot of this stuff in a fairly short period of time, I still have a hard time imagining that there would not have been enough time between episode 1 and episode 22 for some growth arc to have taken place, but apparently there wasn't. And again, how did Malachi end up at this worldview? I find it disturbing. So do I recommend Axcott? If you have a dark sense of humor and you're a fan of comic books, yeah, I think Axcott's a lot of fun. Um, but can I ignore all of the problematic aspects of this series and the fact that a 5-year-old had this worldview in the 21st century? I have a harder time have a harder time dealing with that one.